Jean-Baptiste, and I am the Chelsea Film Festival founder and director. We are going to hopefully host our 8th annual edition this fall from October 18th from October 15th to the 18th. This will be hopefully our 8th annual edition. If it happens, nobody knows exactly what is going on with restrictions these days, so we will just keep you updated. Today is the second episode of Chelsea Film Festival Talks TV series, and we will be talking with Alysia Reiner, our special guest today, about Orange is the New Black. And this conversation will be broadcasted live on Facebook, so please let your friends know. Any questions you have, feel free to put it in the chat box for Alysia. Alysia Reiner is an actor, a producer, an activist, and she's also a SAG Award winner for her role as Natalie, as Fig, on Orange is the New Black. She was also seen in Better Things on FX, on the DEUCE on HBO, and also during the Sundance Film Festival in 2016, she played in the film Equity. That was a big hit at Sundance in 2016. She also loves working as a change maker for women and climate change initiatives, and she's an original member of Time's Up and also an ambassador for the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media. Thank you, Alysia, for accepting our invitation. We're very honored to have you with us today. And to lead this conversation, we have Emma joining us from Los Angeles. She is our wonderful co-host, and she will be moderating this conversation. She has been working as an actress for the past 16 years, and you've seen her in The Walking Dead, in Dallas, and the 5th installment of the Final Destination series. And now she is a filmmaker and also writer. She, for unfortunately a lack of interesting roles in Hollywood for women, she decided to write her own content. And she recently was awarded for her short film Between the Pines at the Chelsea Film Festival. And we're very happy to have you here. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you, Alysia, for coming on to this second edition.
My pleasure. And it's actually Alysia, not Alysia.
Alysia, okay, that's great. Okay, I thank you for that, because I was like wondering exactly how to pronounce it. I know, Alysia.
I know, and it's hard to translate it over Zoom.
Yeah, yes. Well, thank you very much. I got to admit, I'm a bit of a fangirl, especially when I knew you were coming on, and I've always been a big fan of your work, and then I didn't really realize how prominent you were in outside of acting and in all the other things that you do for female empowerment, eco-conscious stuff, which are two things very close to my heart as well. So I'm extremely excited that I get to talk to you about those things, which we will get into momentarily. So thank you for all the work that you do. It's awesome and like gold. So Ingrid just had a great introduction of you. You've been on some of like the greatest, like funny and sardonic shows that we have, which is awesome. On Orange is the New Black, let's start there, since that's like, you know, everyone knows that one. I'm always interested in learning how actors get into these roles. I know that I have a specific sort of system and methodology that I work with when I'm trying to get into the mindset of people so different from myself, characters so different from myself. This character, the assistant warden, must be very different from who you actually are, because you don't work in a woman's prison. For people who don't really understand what actors go through, can you kind of describe a little bit of your preparation to get into the mindset of someone?
Sure. It's funny that I have like 3 different answers for you. My first is when I got the role, it was only 3 lines. So I didn't really know who she would be and what she would, it was really like, like we say, sometimes the body's over there, I had no idea who she would be. And I was so deeply fortunate that they decided to what's called write into her and delve into who she would be. And she originally was the assistant to the warden, and then, it became a place where she wanted to be warden, and she was warden, and then she got fired, and then she came back. Like it's been a long 7 years, and it's been such a spectacular journey. Having said that, even with 3 lines, having read the pilot and thinking Gen G was so brilliant, I did a deep dive before my first day of work and interviewed as many assistant wardens and wardens as I could. I knew a bunch of people who taught in prison. A lot of actors actually do that. And through my connections, talked to a bunch of people, and then was lucky enough to visit an actual prison. So did a little bit of a deep dive of what that world is like. I obviously read Piper's full memoir before I started work. But then additionally, for me, it's so about how is this person similar to me, not how are they different. And that came more and more, the more research I did, the more I decided or collaborated about who she would be. There were hints, there's always hints. And from the very beginning, it said that she was dressed in a very certain way, which was a little bit of a hint to me. And there's, every line, every word a writer writes is a hint to the artist about who that person is, because every word is a choice. Every single word we say is a choice. And I try not to analyze my personal words too much, because I don't think I'm as eloquent as I would love to be. But we all, were I to, for example, start talking brands with you of some sort, that would inform you a lot about who I am. If I start talking about Buddha, that informs you who I am. And so every word was a hint, and I went in whatever direction the writers led me in. And then there's as an artist, I feel like you're kind of a channel, and you're like, okay, and you get hints from the divine channel source that also informs how you want to play the character.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I hear. I think it's so, that just speaks to, you got to make really strong choices about your character. If you have one line, if you have one scene, if you have a whole season, because you just never know where these things are gonna end up and where they're gonna turn out. And I think that that's such a beautiful part of art in general, because it can start as one small idea, and then it can really expand into this whole other world, and the world that they created and you also helped create. Obviously, in those 3 lines, they probably thought to themselves, like, well, damn, we got to have her do more of this. This is great. And it's so rare to be on a show where you get to play a character who has that kind of a journey over so many years. You know what I mean? Like, we really take for granted, I think, like the entertainment that we have, and we'll have, a couple shows are on for 1-2 seasons possibly. So to be on a show that's lasted that long, that must just be, I've actually personally never experienced that, but that just must be such a cool experience, because I can imagine that you really get to know this character inside and out, so that it almost feels like another version of yourself out there. You know what I mean? And can you speak to that kind of up and down journey of that character?
The most interesting part is, Orange is a very special show to a lot of people, and it's had millions upon millions upon millions of viewers and fans, and I'm deeply grateful to them all. And none of them know Alysia, and they know Fig, and Fig is not me, and so different from me. And I'll never forget, I have an 11-year-old now, and when she was 3 and the first season came out, people would come up to me on the subway or on the street, when we could still be on subways and streets, and would be like, damn, she's such a badass. And I remember my daughter learning the word badass from a fan and having to explain what that meant, you know? And so it's a very surreal experience having another version of you so out in the world for so long, and sort of in perpetuity, because it's Netflix and it's not going to go off air, you know, and that's what most people know me from. And it's, you know, I'm really grateful that I got to do the DEUCE, which is such a different character, you know, and in the 70s and like so different. And then on Better Things, we just finished our 4th season. And on that, I always wanted to play the best friend. Like I did a couple pilots where I played the best friend, but I never got to just be the best friend, and not even the bitchy best friend, but just the best friend. And on Better Things, playing Sunny, you know, like she's definitely strong, but she's not a bitch. I think when you're tall and you're strong featured, and smart, you get typecast as the bitch a lot. So it's really fun when I get to just be a friend. And I love, like, when my reps are like, okay, what do you dream of playing more? And I'm like, I dream of playing someone super vulnerable and weak, because nobody ever like someone's super or super you know, just not what I usually get to play.
I completely hear you. We could totally switch if you want, because I'm the cry and die girl.
Right, exactly.
So if you want, I mean,
you'll make a movie. Yeah, you'll make a movie where I get to play you.
Yeah, exactly. You get to play the one everyone just assumes, you know, it just needs to be taken care of and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely hear you on that. And it's interesting. I actually just thought of this as we were talking. This is unrelated to acting, but how many wardens, or you may not know the answer to this, but how many wardens are actually female in that world? Because I would imagine there's not a ton.
There certainly are some, but I would say it's like 10%. It is.
Yeah, it's a pretty male-dominated world, right? I would think. Yeah. Which actually leads me to my next kind of thought, which is like one of the greatest things about that show, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, is how predominantly female, like the cast was, the writer, creator, even a lot of the directors I was looking up and seeing that there was like a lot of female directors. And for people who don't know, every episode has a new director. It might be a person who's recycled through multiple times, but because of the sheer work of doing an episode with pre-production, production, and then post-production, you kind of shift directors. And, you know, up until recently is when we've had all this scrutiny about like letting more women into roles of directing and producing and writing and so on. But I feel like Orange is the New Black like had already been doing that all way back in 2013. So just, I don't know, I just thought that was so cool. I've never like experienced that. Like, what was something that you've experienced being an actress on an all-female, kind of like more, with more of that energy around, you know?
I think, you know, for me, both being on Orange, which Genji created and had a very female-driven writer's room, and then on Better Things, where Pamela, you know, wrote, directed, starred in, I was just inspired. Like, the bottom line is, oh, you're allowed to wear a lot of hats. And it made me go like, oh, I want to do that more, which is really how equity happened. I think as a woman in the industry, a lot of times I remember when, you know, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck made their movie, and it was so accepted, and no one would have ever been like, oh, that's just a vanity project. And I feel like with women, there was a time when I was coming up where making your own content as a woman was a vanity project and as a man was art. And I think bless, we're past that time. And people like Genji and like Pamela and like Lena Dunham is a great one, you know, Lena Waithe, like all of these incredible women who, Ava DuVernay, now you can name so many of them who said, you know, fuck that. I'm going to make my own thing and you can't call it vanity. And they really inspired me. And that's what inspired me to make Egg, which is the movie that I just made. And we had all female heads of every single department. We had a 70% female crew. We're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you happen to need some content, it's on iTunes and Amazon Prime now. And it has amazing women like Christine Hendricks and Anna Camp in it. And so like, and then of course Equity, which is the first movie I produced and starred in that went to Sundance, also on iTunes and Amazon now. But like, that's what made me go like, oh, I can do that too. And that's, you know, as an ambassador for the Gina Davis Institute, that's a lot of what we talk about, is that when you see it, you can be it, you know? And if you see something out there, you're like, oh, I could do that. And that's such an important piece of it, of like, I am showing other women what's possible.
Absolutely. No, that's really well said. And I also feel like, and you've been, you know, able to play these kinds of female characters, which I thank God are becoming more and more predominant. I think a lot of times because we have more female voices in the room. But you see these female characters, like you look at, you know, Fleabag, or you look at Killing Eve. I mean, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is amazing, and she just has a great voice. And as you said, Lena Dunham has a great voice, and Ava DuVernay. Like, all of these women have these really interesting voices and really interesting, not interesting because it's not like it's not like new to women and women's characters, but it's new to our culture to portray women, you know, who have flaws and who are complicated and aren't necessarily just, you know, kind of the side support to the male lead, which I feel like was a very predominant thing. I mean, I even experienced that, so I'm sure you have experienced that. And more now, I think people are willing to see women be real people in a weird way, you know, like versus having to be some sort of picture perfect version of what that could be.
Yeah, fully,
you know?
fully.
Yeah, and I think Pamela, as you mentioned, and Better Things is one of those shows. I mean, she what a great show. Firstly, if people haven't seen it, you guys should totally go watch it.
It's
hilarious.
all 4 seasons, because the season finale was last night of season 4. So all four seasons are on Hulu now.
Yeah. I just would love to know more about like working with Pamela and how she approaches.
She is who she is on the show. You know, she's this like beautifully brilliant genius artist, mama, flawed human, you know, because that's what we all are. And I'm obsessed with her for showing her flaws and not as, you know, I never watched Leave It to Beaver, but I remember being a kid and everyone talking about Leave It, like it was, you know, like I guess my parents watched Leave It to Beaver and that was the reference back then, or the Brady Bunch or whatever. And God willing, she'll be the new Brady Bunch, so that we,
I love that.
like our generation sees that as what a real family is like, you know, like this is real family. This is real love. This is real, the complex stuff of what it is today. And she's, you know, she's incredible and imperfect, because we all are, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I know, and you know, it makes me think of all these stories. I mean, I don't have kids, but you do, and a lot of people do. And right now, during this time, everyone's having to kind of figure out a balance between like work life and parenting and relationships. And I just feel like, you know, it's rife. I feel like there's a lot of material being created every day for these kinds of stories.
Fully. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to juggle all of it. I actually did want to talk about equity too, because I thought that was such a cool. I have to admit, I have not been able to see it yet, but it's on my list of things to rent because I thought it was such an interesting premise. It's a Wall Street story, yes, but kind of maybe the first Wall Street story told from like a female.
Yeah, it's the first ever female-driven Wall Street movie.
Yeah. What inspired you to create or be a part of that project?
I think, you know, I partnered with a woman whose husband actually works on Wall Street, and we were looking at like similar to, I imagine you doing now with like, okay, I want to produce things, I want to make things, and we went through hundreds of ideas of like, what about this? What about this? And which, by the way, like I'm still doing. I just came up with an idea, you know, like with a writer, and we're working on that now, you know. So you're always like, okay, how can we make, what do we, you know, how do we make content that is impactful, and especially in this moment, like how do we make a movie in our own home that someone will actually want to see, you know. So she and I were talking, and at first she said like a woman on Wall Street, and I was like, oh no, I have no desire. And then she kept on being like, I think we could do this, and I think no one's done it, and I bet we could get support from actual women on Wall Street because they have never seen themselves on screen, and a lot of them have done quite well and might want to invest in this. And I was like, oh, that's really smart. So the two of us came up with, you know, a real idea of what the movie would look like, and made it like a thriller. And she wanted to play a woman on Wall Street, so I played a lawyer, trying to, you know, bring all the bad guys down. And we wrote sort of a 2-page treatment for it. And then we went out and hired a writer, and we hired the brilliant Amy Fox, who had written a movie that had been at Sundance a couple of years previous to that. She just did a season on the Connors. She's a brilliant writer, and she did an extraordinary job. We all developed it together, but she really wrote it, and she did an incredible job. And then we went out and found a female director, and then we did, you know, we went and raised all the money, and the great news is all of these Wall Street women made back 115% of their investment in less than a year. So there you go.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were very happy, and probably you also for being a producer. Yeah. Very good. I'm sure you just had, if you interviewed women who really do work on Wall Street, I have a girlfriend who's in the accounting world, and just some of those stories are like, you know, it pale, like it just sends so many shivers down her spine, because it is such a, you know, again, not to say that there's anything wrong with, you know, men in the workforce at all, but it's just a structure where it's not very conducive to supporting women necessarily. So I'm sure you have some crazy stories from those women.
I think the funniest thing are the stories that you couldn't tell because no one would believe you.
Exactly. Exactly. You're like, that can't be true. We should make a movie about it. And then on to Egg, which you said this was the one that was all like 70% female crew, all female leadership. That is really inspiring to me. My newest project in development, we're attempting to do the same thing.
Seriously, when you're ready, reach out to me, because I knew amazing crew and I just love all of the women I worked with so much. And
definitely take you up on that, because that would be an amazing resource to have. But so tell us a little bit about Egg and kind of like what brought you to that story.
Sure. After I made Equity, I was like, okay, I'm never making a movie ever again. It's so hard. Acting is so easy compared to producing. I never want to do this ever again. And then I was on the ferry from Fire Island, which is where where I am now. Here, I can turn around and you can see there's the ocean right there.
Beautiful.
So I was on the ferry back from here the summer that Equity came into theaters, and I bumped into a writer who had written a play that I had loved named Egg, and she said, "Oh my God, it's so weird I'm bumping into you. I just wrote the screenplay for it. Do you want to read it?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, I'm not making a movie again, but sure. And my husband was there too, and we read it, and it's so topical to this moment. It is, I like to say, if you take art and commerce and parenthood and career and draw a Venn diagram, this movie explodes in a dark comedy where they all meet. So it's sort of like a modern day Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And it's so juicy, and I just love it. I love the script so much. And I was like, well, it's only 5 characters and 1 location. This will be easy. Producing is never easy. There's no such thing as easy with producing.
No,
but
definitely not.
Silly us, we thought, oh no, we can do this. And it came together very, very quickly. So, but that was, I guess that was October, and we were shooting by July.
Wow. When it's meant to be, it's meant to be. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever produce again after you've done 2?
Yeah.
Do you think it's hard?
I have 2 movies in development right now and 2 TV shows. So yeah.
As a producer, wow. Okay, so you got bit by the bug. You know what I think is always interesting about the conversation around like more female empowerment in workplaces, and especially in our culture. I mean, what we do, I'm saying, like Hollywood, we're the storytellers of our culture. You know what I mean? We're sort of the modern day fairy tale weavers in a sense. You know what I mean? And we create the content to reflect back to society what's going on in society, or where we need to go, or where we have been and what we've learned, which I think is super interesting. And unfortunately, I feel like sometimes the female empowerment aspect of, just getting more equality really is what we're asking for, in this industry in a lot of ways, becomes like an issue, not an issue, but like becomes this thing that's like, well, that's beneficial for women.
I still want you to see this movie, and then we'll have a conversation, because the movie is actually about like the role structure of our society, and it's what I love about this movie is it's really funny and really well written. But it is about exactly those things, and like sort of making fun of this idea of female empowerment,
Right.
And
yeah.
how do we really break the rules, and what does that look like, and what does that mean?
Right. And also how I think it's just interesting. It's like equality across the board is helpful for all people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that young boys growing up, like I have a godson who's adorable, and I just love that we live in a time now where he wears, pink shirts, and he and his mom like paint his nails, and he's a very masculine little boy too. But we're just a little bit more open-minded now to like, what is a gender role, and what does being female mean? What does being masculine mean? Like, I just love, that we're opening that up for everybody, because I think it affects the men too, and these kind of restrictive roles that we have been placed into, and I think having more female gaze, or just at least having it more equal, will be very beneficial to everybody, not just women.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more.
Yeah. So thank you again for like all of the things. I wish we had like a million more hours to talk about all this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. I just also want to just mention everybody, you have an eco-conscious clothing line?
I do, in this, but we were going to do a cool partnership around Earth Day. And then we realized, COVID happened. So we paused on that. And, but I am super active in the environmental space, and I think this moment in time with COVID, we're seeing some amazing possibility, you know, when
Yeah.
there are so many things around the environment that people said were impossible, and yet we're now seeing what is possible when the entire world comes together on something and makes a decision to
Yeah.
all move forward together. So
Mhm.
that's my hope, is that in this moment we can harness some of that energy and make some real good change.
I completely agree. In the comment section, I'm actually gonna put her clothing line, so you guys can all go check
Great.
it out.
Yes, please.
Because I think that that's, you know, the clothing world, the fashion world is one of the bigger polluters, and so it's good to have more brands do
Yeah.
more eco-conscious moves. So again, thank you so much for
Thank
being our
you.
guest.
It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, you're awesome. I think we're gonna hand it over to Ingrid to do some Q&As from the audience.
Awesome.
So
So
Ingrid?
we have a question here from Gay J, who asked, how does this being a real story, so referring to Orange is the New Black, affect you on our prison system?
Oh my goodness.
And that's a big one.
I could talk about that for ages. You know, it definitely educated me about women in the prison system. The number of women in prison has increased 700% in the last 30 years. And it's not that women are all of a sudden doing a lot more illegal things. It's all about finance. It's all about the privatization of prisons. And it's a business, my friends. And the more you educate yourself, the better off you are to help make change. In that realm, you know, one thing we didn't talk about on this particular call is what we're all doing now in these COVID times. And one of the things that I'm focusing on is, where can I help make change? If, you know, like I was in the middle of doing a play when this happened that got canceled. I was about to start a new TV show that got canceled. So what can I do from my home? And I'm working with some amazing journalists and artists, including Cindy Levy, who is the editor of Self and Glamour. And we're having people on this event like Gloria Steinem, and we're creating an event about domestic violence, because under normal circumstances, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, which is an incredible statistic. And among incarcerated women or formerly incarcerated women, that number goes up to 80 to 90%. So the majority of women who are in prison or formerly incarcerated have experienced domestic violence. So I'm actually, speaking of Orange is the New Black, Piper, who wrote Orange, is now a teacher of women in prison, and she found a piece by one of her students that I'm going to read as part of this event, and it'll be on YouTube on May 13th. So I'll give you more information about that, and you guys can share it with everybody.
Thank you. Carla is asking, how do you find writers?
Oh, such a good question. I think, you know, having spent a lot of years in the theater and on TV, I know so many amazing female writers. But I'm also open to networking. You know, when it was actually harder on my first movie to find a director, and even on my second movie, because there's like a few female directors who are then incredibly sought after, and have like a 2-year waiting list, or they're doing television now, and television pays better than independent film, and their agents don't want them doing independent film. But a huge part of being a great producer is networking and knowing who to call for what. On Equity, it's a great story. Actually, I reached out to a guy named Mark, I want to pronounce his last name right, Skolarov or Sokolov. I have a little dyslexia, so if I've only read a name and I've never said it, it's really hard for me to figure out how to say it. But he runs something called the No Budget Film School. And I reached out to him and I said, in your years working give me one woman that you've met or worked with who you think deserves an Academy Award. Like, she's gonna be the person. And he told me about Mira Menon, who had made a feature for $56,000 that won an award at Tribeca, but after that, she still couldn't get a job, still couldn't get an agent, still couldn't get a manager. And we ended up hiring her, and Equity did incredibly well. And now she has an agent, and now she has a manager, and now she has like 20 pieces of television under her belt, which I'm so excited about for her.
You talked a little bit about producing, and Deborah is asking, what are some of the challenges with producing? And someone else said, producing is a nightmare.
I don't even know how to explain the challenges, honestly. Like, your job as producer, and there's all different kinds of producers. There's just producers in name. Like, some actors, part of, you know, their contract is they get put on as a producer and they get an extra paycheck as a producer, and that's all they do. Some producers are just write a check and that's all they do. If you are a boots on the ground producer and you are actually producing the movie or the TV show, it's like herding cats. That's part of your job, is like getting all of the pieces together. You are the fire putter outer, and fires come to your desk every day. Every single day something goes wrong. Like, that's just producing. Like, you lose an actor, you lose a location, you lose, like, you're always losing something and putting it, like, things are falling apart and you're putting it back together. That's really what an actual producer does, is they do that and they do that and they do that and they do that, and you don't stop doing that even after the movie's out and has the huge premiere. And there's actually a great expression that producing is like throwing a party and hiring all of the staff and throwing the best party on the planet, but you don't get to go to it, and nobody thanks you. And I don't feel like that. Like, I feel like I try and get to my own parties, but it's nobody really thanks you for it. And you have to, like, it's not, you cannot look for thanks. If you expect any thanks or accolades, producing is not for you. It's a very anonymous, humbling job.
I love that definition. I'm going to use it and quote you for it. Janelle Christine Simmons asks, how do you balance your personal life while working on a myriad of multifaceted projects?
Coffee. No. I think the real answer is communication. I mean, like, home office, there was my husband.
You're doing great, honey.
I think the honest answer is open, honest communication with everybody in your family. And from the beginning, you know, I'm constantly trying to be deeply present with my child when I'm with her. And when I'm not, really communicating what I'm doing and why it's important to me and why it's important for the world, like, be it making movies for women and I'll never forget on Equity, when she was pretty small, I guess she was like 5 or 6 when we were making it. I said to her one day, I was like, you know, I know mommy's been really busy between Equity and Orange, and how are you feeling about that? And I said it in a way so that she could say, I'm angry at you, mommy. Like, I don't like this. And instead she said, like, I'm so proud of you, mommy, because you're making movies to help women. And I had communicated that enough times that, you know, she reflected that back to me, which was really beautiful to me.
Oh yeah, that's very beautiful. Patricia, she asks, as an actor, how do we begin negotiating contracts with agents or with film producers?
how do you begin negotiating contracts?
I guess like early on before being booked. Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about contracts early on. Like if you don't have an agent yet, don't worry about contracts. Just go get some work, you know, go learn your craft, learn, like there are great classes about the business, you know, find, depending on where you are, find teachers near you who can teach you both the business of acting and the acting of acting. A lot of classes now sort of marry those two things. And once you get into one of those classes, your teacher will probably, like, as if an agent wants you to sign, you can talk to your teacher about like what's best for you in that moment. But I don't want to say any like sweeping generalizations that aren't really applicable.
Tracy Mayer asked, does the producer have any input into the directing process?
Absolutely. You know, if you hire a director, it depends. If hold on one second. Hey guys, I'm parenting right now. It's okay. Whose computer is that that's very loud right now? Thank you. Okay.
Oh, they're nice.
Our daughter, my daughter that was her PE class. So yeah, she has to do PE now.
So let me go back to the question. Yeah, it was, does the producer have any input into the directing process?
Absolutely. So as I was saying, if the director is producing, if it's their project, and depending again on their contract, they get final cut, but if it's a director for hire, that a producer a lot of times will give input, and that again depends on the person. I, as a producer, tend to like to hire fantastic people and let them do their thing, and I tend to say very little unless I feel like very strongly that there's a problem. And again, like while you're on set, your first AD is the one who keeps things running the whole day and makes sure you stay on schedule. So it's my hope that I never have to dip in and be like, hey, we're not going to make this day. But if you don't have a strong first AD, you might have to be the person to come in and say that.
Great. And Laura Miller, she's saying, would love to know what your thoughts are on harnessing the energy of this time to help propel women's rights in film. Working moms and unpaid labor have gained some attention. With COVID-19, we might be working on smaller projects. Can this help open new opportunities for women to break out?
I believe every moment of our lives is an opportunity. Like, I am a Pollyanna to the 100th degree, and my favorite expression about this time is it's like a meditation retreat we all didn't know we signed up for. And you either have to decide that like you want to be here and learn about yourself and grow and create, or you can decide to be like miserable at the meditation retreat and be like, well, fuck this. I didn't sign up for this. I kind of see it as, okay, free meditation retreat. I didn't have to pay for it, but okay, I'm here. And for me, that means being deeply present, like being willing to look at what are my character defects that I haven't really looked at before. And for me, that's a lot about not living in the past and not living in the future, but being fully present in the moment. I heard recently that the past is our depression and the future is our anxiety. And it's only when we're fully present we can like be here now and be in joy. Because and that's certainly been my truth during this time, if I look at the past and what, oh my God, if only this hadn't happened with COVID, I would have done this and I would have done that. Like I had 3 jobs that got canceled, and I don't know, like, how the money, the blah, blah, blah. And if I go to the future of when is our industry coming back, and when am I going to get to be on set, and when, I'm fucked. But if I stay right here, right now, which this moment is about, oh, I'm healthy, my family is healthy, I can be of service to lots of people, I can create this project about domestic violence, I can, you know, pretty much every day I'm doing a PSA of some sort, be it about, you know, social distancing, about, I'm doing, you know, yesterday was about getting abortion access to women. Tomorrow is about making sure PPE, people are getting enough PPE. And so and like, I'm reading to kids on Instagram every day. There's all these ways we can serve, and let your imagination go wild. Like, yes, this is the moment where everything's broken and you can go create anything, and all the rules are gone. So yeah, go make your own rules and take this moment to reassess your life and say, like, what's bringing me joy, what's not? Let me follow the joy.
You talked about meditation, you talked about staying healthy. Someone asked, how do you stay fit and healthy during this time?
Ooh, I need to move my body every day. For me, exercise is my antidepressant. I know you do Kundalini yoga. My daughter's godmother is actually Gurmukh, and
Oh.
I have been doing a 30-day yoga challenge, and I run or bounce on a trampoline or do some form of activity every single day. That's incredibly important for my mental health, not just my physical health. I love to be out in nature as well. I find that really, really helpful. Gratitude lists are incredibly helpful. Find a group of friends and send each other your gratitude lists, because like, you read somebody else's and you're like, oh, that I forgot about, like, that I could be really grateful. You know, like, there's all different ways you can be inspired by each other and have accountability to each other. Mm-hmm. Writing is a really amazing tool of, like, how do I, like, every morning dumping. I read The Artist's Way, which I highly recommend to everybody. And I read it years and years ago, but this is a time where morning pages is crucial, because it's really good to sort of dump the fear in the morning and then write some positive things. And then I'm a huge fan of meditation, huge. And hey, this is a great time to, like, stick to a plant-based diet, you know? And again, like, no perfectionism in any of this. The most important part of this time is radical self-acceptance and love, no matter what you do, even if you eat like 3 pints of Ben and Jerry's and don't leave your bed. Like, loving yourself through all of this is the most important thing you can do.
Thank you for these great tips. Virginia asked, what sources do you recommend? So now going back to acting, so what sources do you recommend, online groups, classes, etc., to help educate new producers or filmmakers?
I would say join your local Women in Film and Television. That's a great way to start. There's also Women in Media, which is an online platform right now. If you're a director, Film Fatales is another great one. So those are 3 really easy places to start.
Thank you. All right, Gage is very focused on your opinion of the prison system right now, you know, referring back to the show. So he'd love to hear more about that. So he's asking, can you believe there are city police departments who have stated they won't reply to certain crimes? Domestic violence was one of them. What do you feel about that, and how do we fix that?
That's such a great question. So here's the most important thing that I've learned this week about domestic violence. If someone is formally incarcerated or undocumented, calling the cops about domestic violence actually can be really dangerous for the victim. So that actually isn't always the best thing, which I'm like, why wouldn't you call the cops? That's crazy. But all of a sudden this week I was like, oh, I get it. Like if you're undocumented, you could get, you know, shipped off to wherever you came from. And even though you are the victim. So, you know, there's also a lot of cases where if someone is formerly incarcerated and the police show up at their door, there's a bias against them. So I'm always about like, what can we do personally? If you don't like the way the prison system is going personally, there are so many organizations to join. There are so many out there. I'm like, which one? I don't even know what to start with because I work with so many of them. But, you know, go volunteer, you know, be it for the Women's Prison Association or bail out. Like there's so many amazing organizations. You follow my Twitter and you'll see like I'm talking about them all the time. And then the other pieces around domestic violence, one of the best things you can do is knock on a door. If you hear screaming, or knock on the door and say, are you okay? Which is really scary to do because you're like, well, is that, but truly it's a very powerful move of, you know, essentially for the victim, letting them know that someone's listening and someone cares. And for the abuser, letting them know that someone's listening and they may be held accountable. And if you then do see that person, you know, it's tricky in this moment of COVID. Normally, I would say, if you do see that person outside of their home, say, you know, are you safe? Do you need a place to stay? Like helping get them to a shelter or even offering your own home. But it's, you know, I think everybody has to make their own decisions about their own health and the safety of their family in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. He also wanted to know if you're working with the government. I mean, I guess you touched on that. You're working with associations, right? Trying to make a change in the prison system.
The government doesn't really care about actors. Like they're not really interested to hear from me, but we all on a daily basis can reach out to our representatives, you know, because we are all constituents, and that's part of our government system is you can always reach out to your representatives and say, this is not okay. And you can also ask your friends to do that, you know, start a letter writing campaign and see how many letters you can get, because the more letters they get, the more calls they get, the more they have to listen.
Thank you. Gina asked, what TV shows or films are you watching during this quarantine period that you would recommend to us?
I've actually been pretty screen free. Like because I spend so much time on screens during the day, by nighttime, I'm like, oh, I did watch Airplane with my daughter, which is so delightful, like old school. We're watching the Hillary documentary right now on Hulu, which is brilliant. And then I also just watched the first 3 episodes of Hollywood on Netflix, which comes out today, I think, and it's incredible.
I think we're gonna go for the last question. What is the best way, oops, I lost it, it's back here. What is the best way to get your pilot in an agent's hands? Submit to competitions, or what is the best way to go?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm so sorry.
All right. Elisa is the same person, Elisa Noel, who also asked, at what point during a project you created did you need to bring on an entertainment lawyer?
Ooh, I like having an entertainment lawyer from day one. I think it's really a smart thing to have one ready. So that's really the answer to that. Lawyers are everything, and having one like in your back pocket is everything, and one that's affordable, so that you're not like last minute like, oh fuck. So your entertainment lawyer needs to be your best friend.
We actually were joined today by the people who run Broadway stages, where the Orange is the New Black show was shot. So thank you for joining us. They wanted to say hi to you. And is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today before we close?
No, tune in on May 13th for this event about domestic violence. You'll probably see more about it on my socials. So follow me at Alysia Reiner, ALYSA REINER. And
it's in the chat, actually. I put all her
good. And yeah, if you watch Egg or Equity, tweet at me and ask me any questions about it.
Yeah, please do, and keep Alysia on Instagram, follow her. I also added her website. So if you have any other questions, or please also, if you watch the film that she was in, leave a nice review. Those things are important.
Yes, thank you.
Those things are very important for filmmakers and producers. Thank you so much, Alysia, for your time. I know even though we're on a quote unquote a meditation and retreat time, we're also busy.
Yes.
We're also very busy. So I really appreciate your time with us today and responding to all our questions with an open heart. Thank you, Emma. It's just here for leading this great discussion again. And please join us next week we're going to have the cast of Fauda at 12 p.m. next Friday. And please all stay safe and healthy. And as Alysia said, meditation is a great tool to keep your mind sane these days. So have a beautiful weekend. And I hope to see you next week. Thank you, Alysia.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, all.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye, guys.